All right, guys, burning question. Do you prefer Michelangelo's sculpture of David or Bernini's sculpture of David? Michelangelo's is undeniably a classic, and it's a beautiful work of art. David is cool, composed, he's larger than life, he is living on as a legend. And fun fact, nowhere in the Bible does it actually say David is short, only that he's young. So I saw a YouTuber who pointed out that Saul, who was like 6 foot 6 inches, he offers to lend David his armor rather than letting him use somebody else's, which suggests that David may have been a pretty tall kid. So Michelangelo definitely went that route. Bernini has a very different David, one in motion. And the more I see of Bernini's works, the more I think he would have loved film. He's constantly making his marble statues have as much movement as possible. So you can feel the heat of the battle. His David is honed in with focus. You can see the fighting spirit in his eyes, and it actually makes you want to duck because you're just not sure when that stone's going to fly. So personally, Bernini is my favorite. No disrespect at all to Michelangelo, who carved the Pietà, one of my favorite sculptures of all times. But one of my professors pointed out that it's kind of like two different stories that David would tell people. Michelangelo's story is the story that David would tell the girls. Yeah, Bathsheba, I was like super chill. Like he's coming at me, I wasn't phased at all. While Bernini's version is kind of the one he tells his bros, like, okay, so he's only like 15 meters away. I was locked in, like this guy was bigger than a lion, but he was going down. So it's almost like two different stories that he might say. But what does David teach us about living life fully? And when I was little, I just liked the David and Goliath story, but there's obviously way more to David's story than that. Although, yes, I'm going to be talking about David and Goliath because that whole thing continues to be iconic. But here are three ways that David has changed my life, or three insights that have massively transformed things. So, the first thing that strikes me when I sit down with my Bible and read his story as an adult is the amount of mistakes he made. And some of them really make me wince, like the whole Bathsheba situation. Do better. But there are other situations, like when Saul's hunting him and trying to kill him. And David, he finds Saul alone and he sneaks up on him and cuts off a corner of Saul's cloak. And everyone thinks that David should have just killed him, but David actually feels really bad that he cut the corner of the cloak off. Like, that wasn't respectful. Like, I am not faulting you for cutting a corner of his cloak when he was trying to cut your throat, but like for David, he that's another mistake that he kind of feels bad about. But the point is that he actually does make a lot of mistakes. And I mean, David, you're supposed to be a great king. What are you doing messing up? And I guess there's this life lesson that I pulled from that is that you can still make a lot of mistakes and then still be an iconic historical or spiritual figure. The key is, I guess, what you do after you mess up. Own it, apologize when you can, fix it. Which is great because I make mistakes, not one like David's, not ones like David, but my own particular brand of problematic. So mistakes can be like sticky patches that kind of get us down or make it harder for us to try the next time. But I think it doesn't have to be like that. Um, like just coming to terms with that right here and right now. We're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. We know we mess up, and it's great to be reminded that we can become great despite that. We will own it, we will apologize, and we will fix it, just like David. The second thing that really struck me when I was reading through his story was where David says, I will not give the Lord that which costs me nothing. I think he was talking about sacrifice. Someone is going to give him some stuff for free. He said, no, I'm going to pay you because I'm not going to give something to God that doesn't cost me anything, which I think hits extra hard these days. Like, how often do we live life with an attitude of like, what I want, and I don't want to have to pay for it. Or we want things without the work to get there or without the consequences. I mean, guilty. I wish I could be sculpted without having to do weights. I wish I could eat mountains of chocolate ice cream without gaining weight or having high blood sugars. And beyond that, I just really, on a more serious note, I wish virtue was easy sometimes. And as a culture, this mentality of not wanting to pay for things or have the consequences is getting to be a huge problem. We want meals without cooking, and we end up downing fast food and then dealing with the consequences of that. We want intimacy without commitment, and then we end up with children who are in danger of death. We want to get stronger faster, but then we end up downing substances that might hurt us in the long run. Like, I don't know, you think of examples. Where does our desire to avoid cost and consequence actually hurt us? The thing is David takes a really radically different approach. He says, my God is so important to me that I'm not going to give him something that costs me nothing. This gives me chills. Like it's gutsy, it's strong, and it's countercultural. I love it. And I want to live it. Like I will not live a life that costs me nothing. I will love till it hurts. I will stand for what I believe till it hurts. That's the bold, beautiful, wild way that I want to live. So that begs the question then of like, what in our life is worth the cost? What in our life is worth everything? My faith, obviously, but there are practical, smaller things that we can start doing now. Like, for example, my health is worth the sacrifice of working out. My confidence is worth protecting, and I'm not going to hang out with a friend group that might tear me down. My community is worth defending, and I'm going to volunteer or donate to help them. Is it going to cost me? Great. I'm happy to pay the cost because it matters. I guess I was thinking a lot about like, I want to live a life that costs me everything because I have something that worth investing in. And I guess this leads us up to this final and third takeaway, which is going to tie into that iconic story of David and Goliath. And that is what do we do when we're faced with the impossible? One of my friends posted, when God called David to be a king, he didn't give him a crown, he sent him Goliath. And I've seen similar posts kind of like this, where like if you want a cake, God will give you the ingredients. And I've been thinking a lot about this. Like there is this epic moment when David gets anointed king. And I mean, what a feeling that must have been. It sounds insane. Just knowing that you've been chosen, your calling is clear, you see the path, and then you go back and you take care of the sheep. And you're still elated, but there's the sense of waiting. And I'm assuming that there's some sense of trying to figure out like what's next. Um, and instead of a crown, you're faced with this impossible, seemingly impossible task. So, I mean, I don't know exactly what was going through David's head while he was tending his sheep after the anointing, and I don't know exactly what was going through his head when he faced Goliath, but I do know that he did it. And he ran towards this seemingly insurmountable obstacle through the grace of God, he won. So this is a great reminder that sometimes we are called to do things, be it writing a book, taking on a new job, whatever it is we're meant to do. And sometimes those things just aren't easy. And it might be the right thing to do, but that doesn't shrink the magnitude of the task. Actually, I feel like when we're striving for things, sometimes things actually get harder because they're, we're hitting new levels, so to speak. So I guess the takeaway is that you may be exactly where you're supposed to be, even if it's hard. And this hard actually might be your path to the greatness. I think that's pretty fantastic. But anyways, as a tangent, have you guys seen the House of David show or the Angel Studios animated David? Because I actually thought that the animated David had a more epic depiction of David knocking down Goliath than the live action, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. I also grew up watching like Disney princess movies, and I loved Angel Studios' take on it because it felt like classic Disney meets Bible, and that was just very enjoyable. And I also have all the songs stuck in my head. But anyways, at the end of the day, the real question isn't, do you prefer Bernini or Michelangelo? Although, leave that in the comments. I'd love to know. And it's not, would you prefer the animated David or the live action? The real question is, what about you? What about me? How do I recover from mistakes? What giants do I have to slay in my own life? What price am I willing to pay for what really matters to me? So the real questions are, who am I and who are you?